Good morning. And I just want to take a minute just to say how special it is for me to be here. Like Sean had said, I feel like I know Sean really well, but most of it has been phone calls and emails for years and years. And I think last year was the first time we actually met face to face. But I really feel a close connection with this dojo here. I've been lucky enough to be able to, hear about your background and how everything has developed to this point, and it's really amazing for me to have an opportunity to be here today and actually see it. I feel like I've heard so much about it and know so much about the great growth that's gone on that to actually be here is pretty neat for me. So hope you guys have a great weekend. I'm all about being safe, right? So if ever something's coming up where it feels a little odd to you or something, it's important you get my attention. My goal is to make sure you guys have a great time and walk away with one or two things from the seminar. But outside of that, that's really my entire goal, is to keep you guys safe and just hopefully you get one or two things that help you out and you have a good time. Okay? So let's stand up and spread out, please. We'll warm up a little bit. Okay. So from here, let's just start with the rotatory. We're going to come out to the side and we're going to give him a stretch. Okay? So for tension, big thing that you're going to hear me talking about a lot are mechanics. All right? With good mechanics, then we can do a lot of things with it, throw fast with different techniques. Big thing with him right here is that we are directly in front of each other and we have the exact same advantage. So we're going to move off the line, and the way I like to get you off the line is moving rear foot first so that we protect ourselves, then forward. Once his shoulder drops and he's in a little bit of hyperextension, then I'm going to move in and continue back to flight. Okay? A big thing that happens in tension Aikido, we've done it before, is the awkward tension Aikido hug, where you just go in as fast as you can and you can't get to them, so you both stay in position. If you don't see a difference in your partner, if your partner is ever looking at you the same as you're looking at them, when you initiate movement, you don't have real movement that you can work with. So we always have to see a discrepancy, that all balance, and that's where this happens. Right there, and then all right? So let's try that out. Just stretch each other's backs, please. Tension Aikido. All right, very nice. So let's move from there. So before we start throwing, right, I'm trying to go nice and slow so we can all warm our bodies up, right? I always dread like the seminars you go to and they start throwing like Koshinage first class. It's horrible to me, right? So I'm trying to let you guys warm up your bodies a little bit and also just kind of acclimate to the mechanics that I think are going to be best for you. Just real fast before we throw, if you look at a Omni, right, and we look at this forward knee, it's a very strong position. We could throw in it, we could throw maybe heel up, we could throw down, whatever your style is, doesn't matter. But the mechanics of your body are such that when this knee tracks beyond your toes, you put your knee at risk, right? And I'm lucky enough where I get to teach a lot of different people around the country, and the big thing I keep talking to people about is this vertical shin that I'm going to talk to you guys a lot about over the weekend. A lot of people feel as though their knees break down from Swayawaza and Shiko, things like that, and they may. But I've had several people who've blown knees out because of their positioning. So if I can prevent that from happening for one person, that makes me pretty happy, right? So we're going to talk about mechanics a little bit and how Omni can actually put you at risk if you use it wrong. Right? So if I'm going to throw and I move in to throw somebody, say for tension, and this knee comes forward, this is forward loading. This forward loading is extremely dangerous and not how your body's meant to move. Most of you probably heard that in different parts, whatever you're doing in activity, your knee should track forward. This happens all the time in activity. If you become aware of it, you're going to probably notice a lot of times when you move in, you forward load. That's dangerous. So I'm going to bring it to your attention a lot. We're going to try and get your knee to come back. And by bringing it back, you'll have better mechanics, you'll be safer. I feel as though you get more power when you have better mechanics. So I think also just by getting this back a little bit, making this shift to getting people in a safer position, you're going to be much safer for many years to come. So if we look at this throw, here, attention on your right. First goal is to get him off balance. So we come to the side and I look at that knee. I'm not tracking forward, but my knee's back. Second step, what we're going to do is I'm going to have you guys, instead of stepping straight forward, you're going to step towards his rear heel a little bit. Now from there, knee is back, and then we throw. So I have a vertical shin when I throw. So when you keep hearing me, and I'm going to be horribly annoying about this vertical shin thing, I have a good reason for it. And then when I leave, you can ditch it, right? But while I'm here, just pretend you like it, and we'll all like play this game, and it'll all be good. But I promise you, structurally, it will serve you if you can adapt to it. And that's whatever style you have, doesn't matter. It's just mechanics. So to the side, knee back, and throw, knee back. Now let's say that distance is such that I feel like I have to lunge forward. Well, you just take an additional shuffle step in. So if I'm getting stuck, and say that's too far, I'm just going to shuffle in and then throw. Do you guys see that? Does that make sense? All right, so let's just do basic tension again, and let's try and keep your knee back. See how that feels. Maybe you already do it, maybe you don't. Right? All right, take a look. So very nice. I noticed a lot of people really being conscious of where their feet positioning were, and the great part is I'll ask you to do that now, and later you'll forget about it, and it'll try and bring you back to it. A big thing about the line of attack, right? All these things we talk about all the time is here's your line of attack, and I'm saying how maybe moving your rear foot a little bit is what I prefer, is just getting your rear foot and then forward foot. Primarily the reason for that is I don't like to open up to this, right? So this is a very open positioning for me. If you look, I'm putting his weight backward, and I'm completely open here. So nothing wrong with it, just a little different approach of saying rear foot first, but what happens with the rear foot is I shift him a little bit back as I position that rear foot. Keeps him a little bit busy, and then it also builds tension for this lateral movement. Does that make sense? So it's just something to play with. I'm a big proponent of looking at where the openings are in a technique and then trying to close them down. And you can actually just spend a lot of time closing and closing all these windows, and your technique becomes very, very tight. So we're just going to stay with tension here for one more minute. And now we're going to look at your positioning more with as nage before you move. So a lot of us, and this is common, is we become very cerebral, especially at seminar, we start thinking. So we're like here, okay? So this obviously, maybe not the best martial positioning, right? If you saw a picture of yourself, you might cringe a little. So we want to try and have our chest up, our head straight. I do it all the time, I have to be aware of it. My cue is I look at a wall before I start moving instead of the floor. Kind of keeps me so I have a better positioning. So as soon as I see Uke, I look beyond Uke. And I look at the wall behind it. And that just brings my back to where it should be. It brings my shoulders to where it should be. I'm much faster, and I can throw a lot harder when I'm not protracting. Right? So this is protraction. If you work at a keyboard all day, you definitely know protraction. You are conformed to a keyboard, right? That's horrible for Aikido, because it's weakening your shoulder, it's also limiting your range. So if I want to throw hard, I need to open up before I throw. So I'm going to retract my scapula, bring my shoulder blades back a little bit, have my head up, look behind him, and before I move, I'm in a better position to create power. And that would be true in any athlete, for any athlete, any sport. It's all about mechanics, right? You guys, I know we're artists, but I think you're athletes also. Maybe it's up and down and throws people and flies through the air. That's a form of athletics as well. So if you're going to be an athlete, to train like one, you have to look at mechanics more. If I want to create power to throw a ball or throw a person, I need good mechanics where they break down. So for this, we're looking at mechanics, right? Then we're going to move. I'm going to go all the way first. So again, same thing, but mechanics is moving. Oh, he even grabs. So before he even grabs, I'm going to open up my chest and then follow through. Open up my chest and then follow through. And then I'm going to finish, I'm going to look at that knee. Does that make sense? One more thing is when you're throwing, especially at a seminar, it's advantageous to throw your partner out whenever possible. If you've never learned that the hard way, I've learned it many, many times. So if you've never had a foot come crashing on your face or something, then it's safer for me, if I'm working out, to throw him here than it is to throw him towards the group, right? So whenever possible, if you're okay, you can gracefully and nicely say, can you throw me over here? All right? Go ahead. One more minute. Okay. So much better. So now just adding on that, and we'll continue with this opening. We'll change it now to something else, but the principles are going to be the same about that body positioning. Also, most importantly is not, and I know there's a lot of different, again, there's a million ways to do things. Let's just throw it out there now, and then you can just, I won't say it over and over. There's a million ways to do things. They're all correct. This is just my approach, and if you guys just make me feel good and try it a little bit, then I'll go home feeling good about myself, so I won't feel bad, and then if I leave, you're like, I hate it, that was horrible. Just don't tell me next time you see me, and we're all good, right? But for now, pretend you like this, and we'll move on. So from here, so there's a lot of different philosophies about tensionality, right? Some people, you're very tight, staying in, okay? And sometimes going further away. I prefer to go further away because I can produce more power. So for me, I'm going to come out a little further to the side than some people may. Some people might want to be more in here. I don't like his rear foot being planted. So even if he's in a little bit of a side flexion, I'm not thrilled about this position because honestly, he's very stable. He's very, very stable. I might have a little bit of a hip bend, but that's not enough to really deter him. What I want is, I want him here. I want him where he's in that stumble mode. And you're going to hear me talking a lot about that almost primal feeling of, oh no, right? That's very sensitive. So, of like, when you step on ice or something, or you guys, again, you would know what I'm saying. Sometimes when I travel and I say that, people are like, we don't have a. So, when you step on ice and you slip, that's where I want Uke to be. That's where I love Uke to be. I want Uke to constantly be in this whoa, whoa, whoa state. If Uke has time to think about their laundry or looking good when they take Ukemi, then I'm doing my job wrong, right? Great Uke have to be great because they need to save themselves, not to make me look good. So, in my opinion, if I can keep him in that state where he's like, whoa, 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 what's going on, then my job's easy, right? When he sets up and looks composed, then I'm not doing my part the way I think I should. Does that make sense to me? Okay. So here, out to the side, just ever so slightly, right? So it's the exact same mechanics as tension IQ minus the step. So from here, I'm not coming in right into that hug position, right? I'm coming here, a little bit of pressure, rear foot, forward foot out, and as soon as I feel him getting a little off balance, I'm just going to put my hand on his back, and I'm going to turn and drop. Okay? And he can take a forward roll. Now, let's say you're not forward rolling yet. Or, let's say you are forward rolling, but doing it solo, you're still not 100%, right? You know that phase where you're like, you just start rolling, then you go to a seminar and you're like, I can roll. Not a good idea. All right, so I'm going to show you another way to do this. All right? So here, what he can do is, as I bring him forward, he can just tuck a leg. And I'm a very good proponent of falling however you need to fall at your level. Don't fall the way he falls or the way somebody else falls. Fall however you have to be safe. And if you know you're not 100% and going over that shoulder yet, don't do it today. Okay? Here, out to the side. So before he has time to set back up, here, I'm going to get rid of it. Okay? It's just that back. Then as soon as he's trying to find his balance, we're going to capitalize. Okay? Let's look at hand positioning. Here, shoulder, turn, hip, cut down on the forward arm, and go to your rear knee. Okay? So maybe we can make lines and try this out a little bit. Make a bunch of groups. Let's just watch our space. Okay? All right, just stay in your groups and take a look real fast, please. Just have a seat. So, there's just the positioning on this is there's not an extra step. You're gonna come off the line, enter in. Once you're here, we're just gonna pivot. And we're gonna pivot, so it's a little more simplistic, less steps, right? When you drop, there's actually an extension that happens forward, and then we draw back. Now this is a little weird, right? So look at this back here. I'm on live tips on this side, this leg is extended, and I'm actually pulling back, right? Almost like a bow. So I'm extending out, and then I'm cycling back. So there's a little bit of a scoop at the bottom of this. Now let's say you have a bad knee, and you're like, I can't put my knee on the ground, no problem. Same thing, just lunge back, and the mechanics will be identical. So if your knees are bad, just don't drop to the mat. But let's look at it one more time. So here, to the side, once I feel his balance, cross, and then I come back. So there's a little bit of a draw out, and then a connection back. So everybody's going to have different mechanics that they favor, like dropping to one knee, two knees. This is definitely a little different. So just try it if you want. Here, in, and then cross. It's almost like I'm getting under him. Do you guys see that a little bit? Just try it again, but only with ukes that can handle it, okay? Don't take that out and try it with a new person. Thank you. All right, take one more look, stay in your groups, stand. So I'm going to take one more look probably about 20 times, so don't fall asleep for it, right? So here's the deal, right? When you're working something out that may be a different technique than you're used to, a lot of times people think, I'll go fast, and then it'll work out, right? So you see, right, all this crazy stuff, and then you get scared, everybody's freaking out, and then whatever. So if you're practicing, say, driving, hitting the gas is probably not the best thing to do, right? So accelerating, if you're a beginner driver or working on something with driving, is going to make things worse. It's the same thing in Aikido. If we don't have technique first, consistency next, and then intensity last, something falls apart. Now, at all levels of intensity, you're going to lose technique. And typically the equation is you lose about 40% at high speeds. So when you're really moving, and I mean you're just moving, you're in the zone, you're throwing, it's randori, it's jiwaza, you're probably 40% less technical than you typically are. That's fair, right? Would you guys agree? About. So if your technique is not as good as it should be, because you're going too fast all the time, you never have a chance to get better. And then you're always in this state of not being as good as you could be. So when you're learning something, you're trying to work something out, slow it down, get very technical. Believe me, I love to throw fast and hard. I mean, that's my favorite thing. But I can't do those things unless my technique is tight, because I know it falls apart, always has. So I have to be very technical, and then I back off on that when it's time to throw. So you give yourself a chance to learn the movement, and then maybe the second or third time you get to throw, if you want to play with a little more intensity, then be my guest. But I want it done where you're sure what you're doing and how you're moving. If those mechanics are tight, then things will work fine. The great thing about Aikido is you can see someone, and a lot of times I get to see different tests and things when I travel, and you see people that maybe won't do the best test, but they move so well, you don't even care. You're like, man, that looks pretty good, you know? And it's like you get sucked into this because their mechanics are tight and they move from the same plane, and it's very nice to watch. And they make a mistake, you don't even notice it. Then there's people that are doing so many fancy techniques and they're going so fast that it should be more impressive, but there's something missing and you don't quite know what it is. You're like, something's not right, I don't get it. Well, that's the problem, is the technique is broken down too fast, too soon. So your job is to stay right below red line being where everything falls apart, and it's just a mess, right? So if we can stay right below red line with good technique, you can do a lot of really great things. So when we're learning, the learning process gets blocked by intensity. So we're going to be technical, work that knee out, and then just continue to try and be very technical with this opening. And then if that's feeling good, you don't have to pause, you can keep moving. Okay? So just gradually build upon it. All right? Now let's do that throughout the day. Thanks. All right, next. Let's do one more with similar mechanics before we take a short break. So all we're going to do is this. He's going to come in. Okay, so here. So all we're doing is very similar mechanics. Now here's the thing. We're going to step back and out slightly. Okay? If I step straight back, it's going to come on to me, right? That didn't sound right. He's going to fall on me. Let's hope he doesn't fall on me. All right? So from here, we're going to step way out here. All right? So as he comes in, move out of the way. Let him go past. From here, arms extended, lead out to the side towards me. So again, I don't want him just walking and turning. I want some kind of off balance. And that's where this drop happens, right there. So you guys see where that foot comes up? Out out, lead. So forward hand, lead. Lead. Now, let's say, and this happens all the time with this technique, is that I do this. I wait too long. Then you have this anchor behind you, right? So that's bad. So when that happens, my shoulders are compromised, body's compromised, you're now yanking your partner. So if we look at this foot, it's kind of being the border. We don't really want to go too far beyond that. So, here, right there. Same side. Now, let's say he's not rolling, no problem. Tuck away. Top of the ball. Okay? Other side. Out. Lead. All right. Go ahead, please. Back to Bruce. All right, take one more look. See, there's one more look. So now look at these mechanics then. Watch the breakdown. What can easily happen here. All right, watch this. So you pull into, right? Now he's way too close, and now you're going to be like, yeah, don't fall over there, okay? Doesn't really work that way, right? So last thing I want is his momentum coming towards me. So if you get a little eager about moving too fast, then you could pull too soon, and they'll fall into you. Some of you are feeling that now, where you're like, why are they so close? It doesn't feel right. Well, typically, if it doesn't feel right, it's not right. So let's adjust that. This line is going to be based on getting far away. And then there's a little corner drop there at the throw, where I need to take more distance. So basically, if you think of it, I'm incrementally increasing distance laterally. So I'm not staying at the same distance. It's not like we're on this tatami and I'm going to stay at this outside here. I'm actually going to make this an angle that progressively gets bigger. And that's going to make the throw more powerful. And not powerful hard, powerful easier for you, harder for them. So I start here, and then out. You can see that angle. Does that make sense to you guys? Right. So try not to be too linear. I don't want you right next to each other. You're going to initiate, you're going to gradually increase that distance. Okay? Come on, couple more minutes. Alright, so what we're going to do is we're going to do Ikkyo, but I'm just going to talk to you about a little bit about how I'd like to emphasize some different parts of it. For one, we're going to use that rear foot slightly again to move off the line so that I'm not coming here and opening up. So I'm going to go rear foot first, move to the side, and then I'm going to continue to come to the side until that hand touches. Now a lot of times we do Ikkyo, and you'll have Uke, where they just kind of are very comfortable and kind of can hang out here, or maybe put his hand on the mat lightly. But that hand is what is really a live hand that can be striking with, right? So that hand's not really being used to keep him from hitting the mat. So by moving out here slightly, it loads that hand up. So now there's that oh no moment where he has to have that hand out just in order to preserve his face, okay? From here, instead of having the arm horizontal, we're going to stack the bones slightly. We're going to put the elbow above the shoulder and the wrist above the elbow. So by doing this, we stack everything in and then move through. So a common part of Ikkyo that I've never been too thrilled with is the Ikkyo walk. Have you ever done this? You walk around with those, okay? And that happens because your partner's not really in a position that they're at risk, right? They're not in a position where they have to fall. They're falling because they want to fall. So that's always bothered me. So by going out laterally a little bit more, loading that hand up, and then stacking all the bones in his arm, you have much better control, and this makes it a much shorter, more efficient movement. So to the side, the hand touches, and then move straight in. But at no point do I want his hand to be lower than his elbow like this. Right? When that happens, he can easily resist this. He can stop that movement. Go ahead and get tight if you want. right? And then you get into that whole wrestling thing that we don't want. So out here, go ahead and stand up. So here, we're really putting pressure straight down into all the bones, right? So this is just mechanics. When he's locked out, radius and ulna are stacked right over his humerus. They're pushing into his scap. That's pushing into his torso. And you have a direct connection, right? Here, they're deep. So to the side, then stack the bones, one over the other, and keep that hand where it's a little heavy. And I'll know that it's weighted because it's making this heavy noise. If your partner's being cute and just kind of like touching the mat like this, playing with you, that hand's not loaded up, it's not weight bearing. I want a weight bearing hand. All right? Let's try it out and we'll do a little more. All right, so let's take a look again. So now hand positioning is, if we're trying to do joint manipulation, then it's important to know how the joints work, why they work that way. You don't have to get obsessive about it like me. I know I obsess a little bit too much about this, but I feel as though if I can't explain what I'm doing to you thoroughly, then there's a flaw in me, right? So I encourage you guys to ask questions. I know sometimes people don't like questions. I'm okay with questions. If I don't know, I'll just tell you. You know, I'm fine with that. But if you have a question about technique or why I'm doing something a certain way, it's okay to ask, so please do so, okay? With this, when we come into Ikkyo, right, we're dealing with a hinge joint, and a ball and socket, right? So 2 hinge joints and a ball and socket. So when we come in, and this is common, I did this for years, and I would come in and I would put my hand right on his triceps, right above the elbow, because this is just an easy placement. It's an easy place to put my hand. Well, the problem is it's not a joint. You're just putting your arm on, or your hand on the belly of a muscle. So, if something goes wrong, and again, my errors will be yours, so that hopefully you never make them, and get an elbow in your mouth one day because your hand's on somebody's triceps, right? So you can move in quickly. He can just bend his elbow and he can hit. So I need to control this. This is a strike, right? An elbow is a major strike. So if you're going to go into an area and load an elbow up, there's a very good chance one day you're going to get hit. And that's not intentional. That's just you and your buddy training, and somebody's going too fast, and that's going to happen, right? So when we're moving, you're going to put your thumb directly under the elbow, and your forefinger is just going to overlap the back side. So now I almost have this nice catch here, right? Drive your thumb right into it. So this is going to fit nicely. I'm going to be able to control this hinge joint, and come out. Now, as soon as I come out, the pressure into the joints and stacking the bones becomes very, very easy because I'm manipulating joint to joint to joint and then torso. Does that make sense?
Right.
So if and you know what, it's fine to be a little less, like we were saying before, it's fine to be less technical, just move, because you should just move sometimes. But I'm very much about being technical and then just move, right? So if we're going to look at this, and you're going to look at hand positioning, then you're really going to want to control that elbow, and it's going to be a huge ally to make this a lot easier than maybe it was before. So when we enter, off that line, elbow, wrist, load up that hand by taking distance, and then keep it loaded up. As you come down. Now you come down, you have a great position in. You're right at the hinge joint, both of them, and we can do a nice Ikkyo pad. Does that make sense? Let's try it out again. All right, let's look again. So this is one of your mechanics that we can do Ikkyo, Samkyo, everything that you want to do from here. This is all going to come off of this one same movement, right? So when we do Ikkyo, which I have a specific way I like to teach Ikkyo. I love Ikkyo, so it's like I'm very specific about the way I like to teach it. So we'll do that in a little bit. But these mechanics are going to carry over to everything else. And if you keep seeing these openings and you close them, then everything becomes easier, more efficient. You'll see that you're spending less time maybe doing the technique, and you can put more effort into being technical and make it not faster, but more efficient so that you're doing less. And I mean, if we're talking about Aikido where we're taking our partner's energy and we're doing less movement, kind of making them do more, to me that's what it's all about anyway, right? It's doing less to be more efficient. So if we look at this one more time, And let's look at Fuke, okay? So now, what I love is that you guys are all actually trying this, because sometimes people don't. So you guys, everybody I'm looking at is trying to load this hand up. So it's great that you're doing that. Hopefully you're just seeing what that feels like. Again, judge it on your own, but I want you to see what that feels like to load that hand up. Then when you bring this in, you're just walking in towards it. Now, sometimes, I don't know if you've ever had this happen where Fuke rolls this way, right? This is a pet peeve of mine, because I really don't understand it. It's kind of a silly way to take ukemi, right? And then you ever have somebody drop their weight there and be like, you can't roll me over, right? If you haven't, you're lucky. I've had plenty. So this doesn't make sense because you just drop a knee, right? He's my student, so I can do that. So this always kills me when I see people like, come on, I'm gonna get you, right? It's not, martially, it doesn't make sense. So if you're a Fuke, don't roll to your back, because I mean, when I had the pleasure of training with Chapman Sensei for a lot of years, and he always talked about protecting your vital organs. And your vital organs were from below your ribcage to here. Use your imagination, right? So this is all protected all the time. So even during ukemi, you have to think, am I exposed to a strike, right? Because the fact is, if he gets hit here, you know, it's not as big of a deal. Anywhere here, it's a very big deal. So when you're taking ukemi, it's the same thing. You start exposing vital organs, then it makes you very susceptible to strikes. So when you're taking ukemi here, just be aware of what's exposed. He'd much rather get hit in his lats than he would in his stomach. So from here, he's going to streamline his body, try and protect himself the best he can, and then get down on the mat. And when he gets down, he's going to get into a position that he allows for a good range of motion. So one leg's in extension, other leg is in partial flexion, and he has the hand so I can clearly see it. Don't be tricky with your hand and hide it under your face or something, because then one day someone's not going to see it. You want a visual and an audible cue when you're tapping out. And that's huge. A lot of people I've seen people put their hand down here, all these weird places. You're in a seminar, you have to have your hand where people can see so that you can communicate. Ikkyo pin is not necessarily, it's not a submission, it's a restraint. So some people get in here and just start twisting, you know? And they just keep twisting and waiting for you to tap. It's really not a submission in that way. This is a restraint where we're trying to just hold down and keep him from coming up. Okay, you can't get out of detach and move on. Okay? Nikkyo, sure. There's something there, there's a little bit of discomfort. That would be a position that's more of a submissive position where you're tapping out because of some kind of pain. This should not be pain, it should simply be he can't get back up. So it's important to know the difference so you know why you're pinning the way you are and how you're pinning your partner. Does that make sense? Okay. One more you think. All right, take a look again. So, you know, the great thing for me is to watch you guys playing with this and seeing those moments where he comes in and, you know, he's got a very nice, smooth ukemi, but he's very composed here, right? And especially with him, you'll notice he's super quiet. If he's quiet, then I'm probably not doing my job, right? So I want that hand to make contact just a little bit. We're not talking about something major where you're like yanking and pulling. Don't misconstrue this. It's not anything like that. It's hip rotation is all we're talking about. If you look at where he is, where I am, I get that hand a little higher, now that shoulder drops. Again, look at an ikkyo that maybe you may be accustomed to or not, where the hand's a little lower. Look at the composure. Now watch this, when that shoulder drops. Now, watch this, that shift. That's all we're talking about. We're talking about a couple of inches, just little external rotation, and now stack the bones. And just continue to stack gradually. If this feels aggressive or forced, then you're probably doing it wrong. And he shouldn't feel like he's being jarred around. You all know what that feels like. So he gets their hands on you, you're like, change partners, right? So it's like, that's a bad day. You want to be with that person where you're like, oh, this is nice. Nothing going on here, and then all of a sudden you're on the mat, right? That's what we're looking for, is that kind of content, that kind of real nice clarity with your movement. So when you're moving, it doesn't matter what you're doing, it just matters, is it smooth? Are we trying to get this with subtlety? You know, I mean, that's what I'm looking for. I'm just looking for a nice, smooth movement down, and then finish it up, okay? So just try to be more subtle. Don't force it. Look at the mechanics. They're there. They work. I didn't make it up. It's just how your body works. So if you look at how your body works, it becomes very clear why to move this way. Okay? All right, next. Beautiful. I feel like you guys are really playing with that. That's great. So now we're going to do Nikyo. And I know Victor wanted to come out, but I promised Dan, so. I'm just kidding. I'll have you, Victor. So I have a specific way I like to teach Nikyo. And Nikyo is one of those things where if it's done right, it can be very powerful and very dynamic, but when it's done wrong, it can be that horrible thing where you're getting injured, right? So we don't want to injure each other. We want to try and increase range of motion, make your joint healthier, but still have that martial content, make it very, very effective. So the way we're going to do Nikyo today is I'm going to break it down into parts, and we're actually going to take the opening out, we're going to put it over here, and we're just going to literally practice Nikyo the way I'd like you guys to do it. All right? So, if I may. So all we're going to do is he's going to give me his hand and he's going to put it upside down. Right? So there's Nikyo for its start. The thing I want you guys to do is just to start, all we're going to do is we're going to take my thumb, and I know a lot of times, different areas people talk about thumb on thumb. Well, we're going to do a little different. We're going to go thumb beside his thumb. And what's going to happen is I'm going to drive that towards his wrist, and it's going to make his thumb rigid. So if you look at his thumb now, if I put my thumb on it, it moves, right? The joint is free. I'm going to immobilize the joint by coming into it laterally, driving it slightly in towards the wrist. So what happens is this becomes very rigid. Now from there, great things happen, right? So the whole cornerstone of this Nikyo is going to be based on using the thumb to lock the hinge joint to effect for Nikyo. So in the past, Nikyo's here, it affects the hinge joint, but have you ever had somebody sweaty, right, who can get out? Or maybe they just don't feel it, or whatever. So this is going to provide, this is the first part of several parts that we're going to do, that is going to provide this rigid attack where you're going to have an actual thing that you can look at, a target, to do Nikyo. So this is the most important part, right? So then he's going to give me the other hand. I'm going to come into the webbing, and I'll walk around and help you if you can't, not feeling it yet. All I'm going to do is fold this towards his wrist and come into the side of the thumb. When that starts getting rigid like that, I'm good. If he's here where he can put his own thumb in flexion and move it around, I'm not quite where I need to be. So you have a very tangible target. Also, I'm driving this towards his elbow like that, and that's going to help make it more rigid. And you guys will see the effectiveness of this. And again, this is about being efficient and doing less. I'm lazy, all right? I don't want 100 steps to do Nikyo. I want one step, and then I want to move on to the next technique. And as much as I like Victor, I don't want to be in this long, hour-long embrace to do Nikyo. I want to get in there, do Nikyo, move on, do it again, have his turn go down. But if you're spending too much time in a technique, you really have to look at the more time, the more opportunity for uke to reverse, right? So if we can minimize that time, not by being fast, but being efficient, you become much more efficient. Technique gets easier. You can throw harder. You can serve more energy. It's just all good all the way around. So all I want you to do is offer your hand upside down like we just did, and we're going to put a little bit of pressure into that thumb, and you're going to feel it. And then if you're not, I'll come around and be sure that I can help you with it, all right? Please. Thank you, sir. That's all you're going to do. On the side, it's rigid. Now you have to maybe do downwards there, right? Feel how that starts to get rigid right there. It's all over. So now, again, we're just trying to get slack out of the joint, right? And I know you're all such a bunch of Aikido people, because right away you're all like going for that Nikyo, like back off on that for now. Put that in the back of your brain. We'll use that later. But for now, let's just be very, very technical and look at how this is going to work, okay? So we're just trying to get slack out of his joint. So here, lots of slack, right? Putting thumb on thumb, still lots of slack. Maybe not for everybody, but we're trying to find a Nikyo that works for everyone. And a lot of times, I find that Nikyo is kind of biased based on your hand size, right? So if you have these monster claws, and this person with small hands, it's a little easier Nikyo than when you guys switch Uke-Nage. So the beauty of this is that we're not holding way out here, where the hand size is such an issue, but you're holding directly on top of that hinge joint. We're going to turn you a little bit. So here's the hinge joint, and my index finger goes here, my thumb goes here, I make an L, and then I drive directly into that thumb. On the side of that thumb, now you have nice tension there. Does that make sense? So literally, I could do this with 2 fingers, so I don't need a big hand to do it. It's not based on the hand size, it's based on just positioning. And if you get the positions down, things work well. It's very hard to be specific in your technique if you don't understand the positions. I mean, for years we could just do Nikyo and just kind of come through, and you pick up Nikyo and you put it on, and it's nothing wrong with that. But by being very specific and understanding the position of every part of Nikyo, then you can hit those positions. And when things go wrong, you'll say, oh, I'm missing the first position, there's too much slack in this wrist. There's way too much slack, that's why it's not working. Or I got the first position, but the second position is not working for me. So if you can kind of get those, and we're talking about 1,000 times, right, to make a new habit, it's something you're not going to just get today. If you're interested in doing Nikyo this way, it's the kind of thing you got to practice. So now we have this target, right? So a lot of times Nikyo is done on pec major. Pec major is soft tissue, right? So we put straight up against our pecs and we might bow or something like that. All fine. We're going to put a joint on a joint, right? So if you take your hand and you put it on your opposite shoulder and you turn your hand, internal, external rotation, to feel a tuberosity or a bumping around there. If you don't have it, you're probably an alien because you all do. All right, so from there, that tuberosity is actually going to be our ally in doing Nikyo. Very lateral, a lot more lateral than some people like. People like to have Nikyo more medial. The problem with the medial Nikyo here is that the reversal is very easy for him to duck through, right? So there's a very nice reversal here that if you're putting pressure down, that he can scoop me right back up. So to try and prevent that window, we're going to take this now, and we're going to put it right on the head of your humerus, right? So from here, if we don't do anything else, you just were to drive in with the head of the humerus, you'd have a pretty good Nikyo. Probably be pretty good. But we're going to make it better. So all I want you to do now is you're going to take this thumb, once it's rigid, place it on top of the head of the humerus, and you'll look at the pressure right there, and just do a little lunge. That's it. Don't even rotate it yet. Don't do anything. Just do a little bit of a lunge. Now you're all going to want to put that other hand on and rip this down. I know it. Because I'm just like that. So just place it there. Keep inside leg forward and just do a slight lunge. Now when we lunge, this is going to be specific also. You're going to have your knee pointed at his sternum right here. And we're just going to lunge forward while keeping your knee back. Go to the other side, slack out, on top, and lunge. All you're going to do is going to be a very subtle feeling, slight tap. Nothing should be major. You're not slamming this on. It's very slow. Does that make sense?
Right.
All right, let's go. So you probably had your partner in some kind of elbow flexion while you were trying to come in. And this was tight and we were just leaning in a little bit. Now some people were going a little straight and we were saying, okay, just help them out, bend their elbow, which the next piece will take care of that. But what we don't want to do is ever do this with a straight arm. We want to make sure his elbow's in a little bit of flexion. That protects Uke. So now, again, thinking about, and I like to think about all technique like, it's like a rope, right? If there's slack in the rope and you have 2 cars, there's going to be a little delay until that rope is taut and actually moves one from the other. Power is being produced. You need a tight right? Conduits. The same thing here. If there's slack in the joint, you're going to have delay. So we're looking for 0 slack. This should be full tension, no slack in the joint. You've taken that hinge joint, you've ratcheted it down using the thumb. There's no more slack there. Now we go after the elbow, and that's going to affect the shoulders. So from here, this is where you were last time. Now this hand, we're going to hold this against my shoulder first. So you'll notice this arm's an extension, then it comes in. And watch as I lunge forward. Now this again isn't all of it. Well, there's more, but I haven't met too many people that can use the last piece. So we can continue to rotate using that tuberosity. So we can, continue to rotate as you go through, and the tension on that is going to be extremely significant at that point. And you'll notice his ukemi is no longer pretty, right? So that nice pretty ukemi where you're doing Nikyo on someone, and go ahead, talk about it. Oh yeah, great. I gotta meet Nikyo, right? Okay, for one, that hand is live, all right? I'm not personally, having my wrist manipulated, probably not going to just touch the mat. I'm probably going to hit you if you're trying to hurt me, right? So having this hand be so active is not going to be what I want. So I'm going to stack those bones, and I'm going to keep him in a position where he can't come out of it, right? From there, then it's a very easy transition to come into the pin because you've stacked. Radius and over the humerus, everything is progressive, and he's no longer in a composed state. Does that make sense? So now what we're going to do now, is thumb first. We missed the thumb, this whole thing, probably still doable, but it's not going to be as effective. Shoulder second, go into extension first. He's just going to help get the slack out of the elbow. Now I draw him in tight. Right? From there, just stop there. Now this is specific. Make sure your knee is pointed at him, and we're not like this. And again, no openings. You're in a nice lunge, knee is back, and we just come forward. He taps, you stop. Don't worry about the pin now. Okay? Let's try it out. Nice and slow. If you do this right, you should take very little effort and you can get up speed. So I want to come up. All right, take a look for a minute. So there's a lot of this going on, so I assume that you're doing it right. I know how it feels. So there's good news and bad news. So learning this Nikyo, right? And this was for years and years and years. I love Nikyo. And I loved doing it, but I hated receiving it. And I always felt like, so horrible and being beaten and all this, it's just rough on your joints. So I'm not going to say that this is easier on your joints, but it should be more efficient so you don't have to stay there so long and the joint doesn't have to take a long period of prolonged range of motion. So the idea with this is to make it a little faster so the joint isn't prolonged in these flexed positions where you're in discomfort. The bad news is you just were given a serious weapon, right? So if you slap this on somebody, it's going to be a very bad day. It's not the kind of thing where if you've ever seen people hammering down Nikyos, you can never do this Nikyo like that. It will, I can guarantee you're going to break somebody's wrist. It's 8 pounds of pressure to break a wrist. This is more than 8 pounds of torque. Trust me. So it's the kind of thing that you have to treat it with a lot of respect and do it the right way. And I like to think of it more like a boa constrictor than a cobra. How's that? All right? So you're gradually creeping up on it. Uke should feel pretty safe. They're like, think you're crazy, playing with their thumb and everything, right? Then all of a sudden it's like, whoa, what just happened? I have nowhere to go. I'm in trouble. Uh-oh moment, right? As opposed to this snap or fast movement, which Nikyo, in my opinion, should never be done that way anyway. It should always feel almost safe until it's no longer an option to get out of it. Does that make sense to you guys? Is there any questions with that Nikyo? Did anybody not feel that Nikyo? I'll come around. Go. So what we're going to do now is we're just going to do Shonuchi Nikyo. All right, so now we'll just put it all together. Did Dan leave? Where's Dan? So here, all we're going to do is Shonuchi Nikyo. Now we're going to do it from Ura, so we're going to enter here. And when you enter Ura, just I'm going to show you the way I like to do it, is, again, I don't want, especially a big guy like this, I don't want him having composure, so I'm driving here. Now, I'm a little sneaky too, so the reason I like to be here is because I have a sharp bony elbow, and he has a rib cage. So if I ever get stuck, nobody really likes being rubbed with your elbow into a rib cage. Also, it's a strike if I need it. So if you keep elbows down, you have this nice little extra piece if you get stuck. Again, nothing to be used, maybe just something to be aware of. But here, his weight is coming back slightly, so he's not in balance. My elbow's directly into his ribs. And now I'm going to extend around and down, make that switch for Ikkyo. Now watch this. Remember Ikkyo, how we stacked bones? It was difficult for some of you to get the thumb. It's going to be so easy now because look at where it's stacked. You're stacking straight down. This is way easier to get this Ikkyo on top than it was when you offered it out. So now the thumb is going straight down. I'm not going to play the whole game of come on up, man. Oh, we got Ikkyo now, come on up, man. Right? So like that whole thing, nothing wrong with it, just not my thing. I don't want that up-down motion. I want to keep him down. He's down, no need for him to come up. I feel safe here. So stacking those bones, making that hand weight bearing. Now watch where this goes, right into Ikkyo. Right? So it's all based on everything you just learned. You already know how to do this. Okay? So here, off the line, elbow comes in, bring him around. Now I start to stack the bones. Even if things go wrong, doesn't matter. All I'm going to do is get the hand over the elbow. Now my thumb is already on top of his thumb. It's actually way easier to pick up. I put a little flexion in his elbow to help him out, and then I'm going to lunge it back. From there you can finish it up. So I'm not interested in the pin yet. Just want to see the segue, going through Shomen. Think of how we did Ikkyo. It's the same thing. Now the transition is going to be easy to pick up Ikkyo. All right? Let's try it out. All right, let's take a look. One more time. So now what you should feel is a certain amount of confidence when we get down here that you have time. Okay? Ideally, that's what I want to do. I want to buy you time to make these transitions. As opposed to maybe feeling like you have to be perfect with every transition. You get it before you stand back up and have this pressure of this dynamic of this recovery happening, which is all fine, and it's good to train that way as well. But I prefer to have a buffer, right? And being lazy like I am, I'm trying to get him so that I can work less. So from here, there's an opening for him here too. All right? There's an opening where he'll scoot away. And some of you will find as you're trying to get it, he's scooting away. So there's a great way to help keep him close. So as he's scooting away, I just come behind his elbow and I just persuade him to stay close to me. So if I come behind, not on the elbow, but on the triceps, and I allow a little flexion in the joint so there's no hyperextension. If you don't like where he's going, don't chase him. I'm not going to chase after Uke ever. I'm going to just talk him into coming over here a little bit. And then he'll be persuaded to be where I want him. And then from there, I can do whatever I want, and I can take my time to get a nice quality Ikkyo. Okay? It's a scooping motion. It's important you don't come to the elbow. It's important you put flexion in the elbow first, because otherwise you'll hyperextend. And you're just scooping close when he gets to where you want him, then put the technique on. Okay? Try it again.
There you go.
All right, let's stop there. Nobody has any safekeepers to write or anything. So we'll give your wrist a little break now. I don't mean break. All right. Any questions on that? All right, great. So we're going to move away from Ikkyo, but just remember, just same thing. We'll be doing Sankyo at some point. All those movements are going to be based on getting slack out of the joint, tightening the joint before motion. So I mean, a big part of making these techniques more effective, whether it's Ikkyo, Sankyo, Gokyo, Rokyo, it doesn't really matter. It's about getting the slack out before you try to apply. And if you can get the slack out, put tension into joints, get them articulating in a way just outside of where they're comfortable, where that tension is, everything is much easier. You don't have to work so hard. Then. So let's do Yokomanuchi. And before we get into too much of the opening, I just want to show you a little bit about how I want to do this opening. We're going to do a direct entry of coming off to the side. Okay? So a couple of things I want to see is that you don't have any part of your body on the line of attack. So it's very common to go so much for the arm that you leave something behind. Now I'm pushing him back, this leg is loaded, you get kicked. Right? So we want everything out of the way. So you're going to thoroughly move out of the way and be at this angle so that I can see his heel. His heel is my reference point all the time. If I can see his heel clearly and I have a clear pathway to it, there's a lot of things I can do there because it's just outside of this posture. This, where it's blocked, I can no longer see his heel and I'm beside him. This is not as strong. He tends to come more upright, and it's hard for me to enter, if you look, just because we're so close, I can't step as easily. So this positioning right here is a little more advantageous to get in. I have a nice opening. I can see his heel. His balance is just teetering like there's a stick holding him up. I'm going to kick it away at some point, right? So now let's look at the hand positioning. I don't know if you're like me, but you ever had people doing this to you for like 3 hours, right? You go home and you have to explain to your friends why you're bruised all over the place, right? So here's a couple of things that are wrong with that, outside of it being extremely annoying, is you're striking, your partner is entering with just their ulna. Your ulna, which goes from your pinky down, is not that big of a bone, right? So if I have a big guy and I'm going like this, eventually you can fracture. And it can happen. You ever have a partner with forms like this? They look like trees, right? You're coming in. I mean, you can easily fracture. So if we simply turn your palm towards your face, now you suddenly are using your radius and ulna together with a lot of muscle. Okay, brachioradialis, all your flexors, all the good stuff. So from here, much better positioning. This is almost pure bone. There's some fascia here, but you're not talking about a lot of muscle that's protecting that bone. So by internally rotating, you now are using 2 bones instead of 1, and you're recruiting some muscle, some soft tissue, as opposed to going skeletal to skeletal. Does that make sense? So it's going to look like this in slow motion, to the elbow, and then extend. Okay? So it's going to be to the elbow and extend. Now when you put it in motion, it's very subtle, and you probably won't see it as much. But at no point is it this. All right? And you'll know because you won't hear that crash either. So that crash typically happens when it's single. When it's here, it doesn't really make that noise. All right? Also, by taking your hand and then coming in palm and then rotating, it helps to draw his posture more. So it's a whole other level of drawing his posture off just a little bit, just outside of good posture. So all we're going to do is work this entry, and we can do it slowly, but we're going to go palm and then rotate. Palm facing me, rotate. And then look, you should have rib cage in front of you, foot in front of you, hip, everything should be in alignment. If this angle is established, you're good. All right? Just the opening. So now, and this is just again body awareness, trying to be aware, not to talk a lot about awareness in Aikido, but it's important not just to think about partner awareness, but being aware of your own body positioning like we're talking about so much, which you guys are probably tired of, but too bad, it's not happening. We're still talking about it, right? So when you enter, a lot of times people become top-heavy, and it's an effort to get in quicker. So if you make it to the attack, and I bring my weight up. You guys see this? Kind of bringing yourself up, right? It's the exact opposite of what you want to do. You want to ground yourself, and if anything, you want to drop your center. You guys all know about dropping your center, right? So from here, I just drop my center a little bit, right? So don't elevate yourself. If you're feeling like it's not a 50-50 weight distribution with your feet, if you're feeling like both mid-foot is not grounded, then you're probably not in a good position to create power or take his off balance, all right? So now all we're going to do is the same entry. We're really going to try and ground ourselves. I'm going to slide out, come under, and help him bend his elbow. Okay? So from here, we're not going to grab at all. There'll be no grabbing. It's all going to be hands in extension. So enter, here, slide down, change extension, and it looks a lot like Shionaka, right? It's a similar positioning, but it's going to be a little bit different. So here and down. So enter at the elbow. Here this hand is up, comes directly under to his armpit. This arm slides down. Both thumbs are up. Now watch this thumb. Comes to the elbow. Draw straight back. This hand goes away. Watch how it affects his posture. Here. Straight down. So really try not to grab. A lot of people are going to start doing this. Try not to do that. Make this all in extension. And we can do some other things from this entry. Here and down. Okay? Nice and easy. All right, take a look. Right out of what we talked about with Joe. Just blend in or something. All right, so same thing we talked about. First thing we did was, let's just get to this position is, if you are here and Joe's looking at me, watching me do this, there's probably something wrong, right? So the best technique in the world is not effective when your partner's standing there looking at you. You have that awkward gaze where you're just looking at each other and again, right? So he's just going to punch you, all right? He's not going to hang out and let you do that to him. So if we always have that, which we're not obviously, but if we have that mentality that like, is this martial? Am I in a martial position right now? Is this a good position for me? Should I be manipulating joints here? You got to ask yourself that question. If the answer is no, you got to go back to the beginning, do the opening again, manipulate the posture, then manipulate the joint. But you can't jump. No matter how bad you want to, you can't jump that first step. You got to get posture first. Makes your life a lot easier too. All of a sudden you're like, wow, this is easy. Well, yeah, because they're falling or because they're off balance. So when I enter in, if my entry is kind of here, right, and he's composed, this is going to be impossible. And it doesn't even matter. I need to figure this out first. But if he's here, right, a little uncomfortable, doesn't really like it there, then it's very easy to get that position. Then it's not a big deal. I could even do it poorly. I'll probably still fall down because he's already fallen. But if he's not already here, right, and what I saw a lot of was just, I'm going to do just this. You don't have me. You don't have me, right? So of course he doesn't have me. So now he needs to get out here. Now, it doesn't matter what he does. He can enter in with his hand to my chin and this is over anyway. So you want to have multiple options from any position. And that's actually how you get better at randori, better at jiu-jitsu, is by having these multiple answers to one entry. So if you're looking at this and your partner's off balance, and now we're trying to do one specific technique, you should have 20 because he's off balance. It shouldn't just be about this one technique. It should be about anything. And the way that works is if I enter in and this all goes poorly, I'm like, forget it, right? So you got something else, right? But this, right here, you don't have other options. You don't have one option. You have to take his posture first, and that's why I'm going to keep distance, get him where I know he's uncomfortable, and then figure out what else I want. Okay? Does that make sense? So let's go back to our basics. Posture first, technique second. Make sure your partner isn't looking at you, all right? This should be, all that stuff, all right? Go ahead. Start again. All right, Nick. So we need to work it up. We need to refine it, but we're going to throw with it. So what's going to happen is, I saw far less awkward gazes, right? Far less of you guys just staring at each other, but I still saw a couple. So I still want you to be aware of that, making sure that your partner, first and foremost, is balance is broken, your posture is good, their posture is bad. And if you can just every time say, is my posture better than my partner's? You're probably going to be okay. Even if your technique all falls apart, you'll be okay. But when you have an equal positioning of posture at the time after the entry, you have a structural problem that regardless of style, technique, or anything, I think everyone would agree is not something we want to do, right? So it's all going to be about posture. You get better, they get worse. The other thing I saw, and this sometimes happens, I've done it before, is the sympathy Okanuchi entry, right? Or you both lean, and it just gets really weird then, where you're like, okay, we're both lean. So now you're both in really bad positioning, and again, it's become an equal opportunities position where anybody that can get back to center is going to win. So we want to have that superior positioning of checking my shoulders, everything is in good alignment before I enter. You don't have to do a whole crazy checklist. All you need to do is, am I in a good position to throw? That's all I say to myself, is this a good position to throw? Okay, I guess I'm pretty good. Here, enter, he's off balance. Underneath, we fold, and then we pick up Gaki Kodagesh. All right, Gaki Kodagesh is going to fall right into your hand without any kind of effort. It's going to be there. So let's go slow. We'll do that same side. So entry first, down, through, fold. Look at this. Oh, there it is. Straight down. Okay. So if you fold his arm this way, lots of good techniques will fall right from here that you don't have to struggle too hard to pick up, as long as this entry is tight. The other thing is when you enter, you're afraid of using this. Don't hit, but establish distance. You know, I see a lot of people with it back here. He's going to come right back up. I want 2 hands involved. And then this way, when it comes under, you're in a good position. Move out laterally. You're going to pick up out to footage. Okay? So, this is our next technique. Once more. Enter. Here. Fold his hand. And look at how it comes right into mine. And move away. Alright, let's try that. Here. Hand under. This comes together. So this is on the belt. We're going to watch this. Keep the leverage. Move out right here. So the thumb was here. Points out. Comes to the back. Imperial push. So, now let's go over how everyone can fall. You can forward roll. You can tuck away. So now for the entry. Similar to that real tutorial that we did stepping, you're not going to step straight back because he'll still keep coming. We're going to step out, back, and you're going to be on an angle. Both hands come up like Ikkyo. This hand comes down and leads into the forward foot because he's already coming into that slice. Here, this hand needs to be up to keep distance. Turn your hip and cut. So watch. 1, 2, 3. So it's not here. You don't want to pull this. This will come in tight. But instead, lateral movement out, draw, and then strike. So I'm moving away from it. Moving away, creating power, and then get out of the way. Move away. And it's simply like showing chi to his elbow. Make this. And only fall to your level. Okay? Gotcha. Alright, look again. Stay in your groups, Joe. So when you turn, it's almost like EI, right? It's almost like I'm drawing. Right? I'm drawing the sword. Here, out. Nice and far. Right? Don't make this short. Right? So full extension as I draw, right? Same thing here. As I'm coming through, full extension. Right? Full extension all the way across your body. Once he's in motion, the second hand just finishes with a cut. But it's really the forward hand that's the primary lead. So if I'm out here, draw, that's the primary. And secondary is the hand coming to the elbow, the shonuchi, right? And this serves a couple of purposes. For one, it serves the purpose of keeping my eye between him and I. For two, it keeps purpose to just finish the power so that it has a more, instead of just launching him out, you're cutting him down a little bit too. Right? So here, draw. Right? So it has to be that primary forward hand. If you get too much here, it all gets very constricted, very open here. This is very tight, and now I'm kind of changing my mechanics. So I want this big motion, draw, and cut. Okay? Does that make sense? Just a minute more, please. All right, stop there for a minute. Please stand. So when you throw, and I know this microphone isn't throw, but try not to, as much as you like your partner, don't keep them, right? So I don't know if you've ever been on the receiving end of, sorry Dan, in advance, this. All right? People just keep holding on to. There's a part of ukemi that just has to happen, right? And for one, you have people all different ukemi levels. Not everybody can take a high fall, not everybody can take a roll. You have to be able to give them an opportunity where you're still throwing at a good pace for you, but you're still giving them options. When you take away all the options, you're putting people kind of in a dangerous position. So, especially on any throw that I'm going to do, I'm always going to have it so that they can get away, right? And I mean, I can throw him hard. I can make him stay with me further, but it's not going to be from grabbing him. It's going to be from positioning. And that's important. You don't want to get into habits of pulling back on people because your joints really aren't meant to go through that extreme hyperextension of being pulled by your arm, basically. It should be a lead, and at the end, it should be a release, not that yank back. And that's not good for your shoulders, your elbows, or anything. So if you could try to not do that, I'm sure your partner would appreciate it. You'd probably be more popular, more people bow to you. But also, it's just safer, and it's just a lot healthier if you can do that. All right? We're going to finish up with cultural hold. But what we're going to do is